Hello and welcome. I'm Terra Little, author, speaker, and educator, as well as creator and founder of February 365 and the Black is Lit Book Club experience. Thank you so much for joining me here. I hope you enjoy your stay. Go ahead, grab your favorite pillow or blankie or throw, your copy of the book. Here's my Kindle, your coffee, your tea, your wine, or whatever it is you're drinking. I'm drinking water because I need to hydrate more. And let's get ready to get into our featured text, which is The Reformatory by the esteemed Tananarive. Go ahead and get everything together. We'll meet right back here in a few moments and we'll get started. Okay? Okay. Okay, so we're back. And I just said a few moments ago that our featured text is The Reformatory by Tananarive. Now, Tananarive is or has been a leading voice in speculative fiction for the past 20 plus years. I got that directly from her website. I first met Tananarive, I believe it was at the National Book Club conference several years ago. I was there and she was there, and I ran into her, and I had a complete fangirl moment. I had just not too long ago read the book, My Soul to Keep, for like the 30th time when I ran into Tananarive at the National Book Club conference. And I just had to let her know that the book was just masterfully written. If there is ever an author that you can count on to like educate you as well as entertain you, is going to be Tananarive. All throughout her books, I love the way she weaves in historical facts, just little juicy tidbits of information that get you to thinking and never fail to send me off to Google to research and learn more about any given topic that I find in her book. So that's her books, excuse me. It's one thing that I love about Tananarive's writing, as well as the fact that it completely sucks you into the story. She's just a great writer and I enjoy reading her books. I've read several of them. This one, The Reformatory, is the latest offering by her, and I cannot wait to get into it with you guys. So, our reading assignment for this segment of the Blackest Lit Book Club experience was for chapters 1 through 10. We just started the book, so we're going to dig into it. So, go ahead and crack your copy of the book open. I'm going to get my Kindle ready and geared up so we can get ready to talk about it. Now, what the Blackest Lit Book Club is not, it is not meant to read or recite a book, any book, word for word or line by line. That takes away to me from the reading experience. You don't need me to read to you, and I certainly don't need you to read to me. But what I do need, and what I think a lot of people need, is a space where we can come together, discuss the books that we're reading, things that may jump out at us, specific quotes, trains of thoughts that we're having based on something that we've read, any connections that we've made to the text, and just things that are just like wow moments. As an avid reader, those are the things that I like to come together with other like-minded readers to discuss and mix up and chop up and really get into. It enhances the reading experience, and I just love a good book club experience. So I hope that's what this is for you, a place where you can come as you're reading the featured text, whether you're reading right along with us step by step, or you've already read the book and maybe you're rereading it, maybe you are at some point in the story, and whatever it is that we're talking about here, on the Black is Lit Book Club experience episode, gets you thinking in a different way or reflecting about something a little bit differently or even a little bit deeper. That's the goal of the Black is Lit Book Club experience. I do not intend to just be spouting off spoiler alerts for different books. Every now and again, in order to talk about this or that or whatever, it may be necessary to get into a particular plot device or something that's going on in a plot in order to dig deeper into whatever it is that we're talking about. But I intend to avoid, as much as possible, spoiling the reading experience for those of us who haven't yet read the book but intend to get to it, or who are reading it but may not be as far along in the text as we are, or who, just we all like a good surprise. So we're going to try to save any good surprises, for the surprise moment as much as humanly possible. So no, we will not be spoiling any big major plot twists if we can at all avoid it. And yes, we intend to maintain the integrity of the reading experience. So again, thanks so much for joining me here on the Blackest Lit Book Club experience. We are about to dig into chapters 1 through 10 of The Reformatory by Tananarive. Need to know more about, or you should want to know more about our author, Tananarive. Check out her website, tananarive.com. I'm going to be using the plot diagram to help me get into the first portion of this book, the first 10 chapters. Here's a plot diagram. All right, so at the base of the plot diagram, at the very beginning, is the exposition or the introduction. And in the introductory phase of a book, we typically learn who the major players are, the characters, and we get a little bit of information about the setting, where is the book taking place, um, in terms of physically as well as historically, like what's going on when this story opens up to the readers. Those are the types of things that we find out in the exposition or introductory phase of the book. So let's get into that. All right, first off, the setting. Gracetown, Florida, 1950. Now, the back cover blurb for the book says, give me a moment to get to the back cover blurb of the book. I probably should have had this pulled up. My apologies, but whatever. Okay, back cover blurb says Gracetown, Florida, June 1950. 12-year-old Robbie Stevens Jr. is sentenced to 6 months at the Gracetown School for Boys, a reformatory, for kicking the son of the landowner in town in defense of his older sister Gloria. So begins Robbie's journey further into the terrors of the Jim Crow South and the very real horror of the school they call the reformatory. Robbie has a talent for seeing ghosts or haints, but what was once a comfort to him after the loss of his mother has become a window to the truth of what happens at the reformatory. Boys forced to work to remediate their so called crimes have gone missing, but the haints Robbie sees hint at worse things. Through his friends Redbone and Blue, Robbie is learning not just the rules, but how to survive. Meanwhile, Gloria is rallying every family member and connection in Florida to find a way to get Robbie out before it's too late. All right, so 10-year-old Robbie Stevens Jr., Robert Stevens Jr., is sentenced to 6 months in a boys' reformatory, admittedly a place that does not have the best reputation. Word around town is it's a haunted place. Um, we've heard in the book description that boys have gone missing there. And so 10-year-old Robbie Stevens has been sent there for kicking a young man, the son of one of the, or maybe the largest landowner in town, a budding football star or hopeful football star. And here Robbie is, kicks him in the leg. First of all, we have to deal with 1950s Florida. And so we're talking about the Deep South, Jim Crow era, segregation, discrimination running rampant. And Robbie hauls off and kicks, you know, a white landowner's son in the leg, which is possible moneymaker, I guess, if we're talking about football, and earns himself after he's, roughed up a little bit by the landowner himself, earns himself 6 months in the boys' reformatory without the benefit of any due process or representation or anything like that. So this is what's going on when the story opens up. So we've got the setting, Gracetown, Florida, which I believe is a fictitious town based on what I'm sure are many towns as such at that time in Florida and other southern states as well. So 1950 June, we've got a 12-year-old Robbie Stevens Jr. who is going to the reformatory for 6 months for defending his 16-year-old sister, Gloria Stevens, against the unwanted advances of Lyle McCormick, the son of the landowner, Red McCormick. So this is what's going on. Robbie, of course, is terrified. Gloria does what she can, but again, she's 16. So all right. It's pretty much what's going on here in the first 10 chapters of the book. It's kind of like, oh my God, they're sending this boy to jail, 6 months old, or Jesus, for 6 months, and he's 10 years old. I'm just discombobulated with the whole situation, and I feel so bad for Robbie, but it is what it is. 1950 Florida. All right, I'm checking my index card, so bear with me for looking down. All right, so let's move on. Now that we're familiar with, the plot of what's been going on for the first 10 chapters of the Reformatory, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the characters that we met. We've already established Robbie Stevens Jr., who is unfortunately on his way to the Reformatory for 6 months. Says in the book description that he's a talent for seeing ghosts. So Robbie has a talent for seeing ghosts. We'll get into that a little bit more. We've met his sister, 16-year-old Gloria. And then there's Miss Lottie, the elderly lady, with whom Robbie and Gloria have been left with after their father, Robert Stevens Jr. or Sr., was run out of town for trying to unionize and organize other Black workers for better working conditions. So he's currently in Chicago, hiding out, in fear of his life after having been run out of town. So Miss Lottie, the elderly neighbor and presumably family friend, is tasked with keeping an eye on the kids, the 16-year-old and this 10-year-old. And Gloria herself is trying to assume the role of, surrogate mother, as the kids' mother has died, or is unalive, due to an illness. So it's really just the kids and her dad, who is not in the picture right now, and Miss Lottie, the neighbor, who is trying to help, but Miss Lottie is old and probably needs some help herself. Then there is Warden Haddock, who is the warden of the reformatory, and I find it highly interesting that it's a boys' reformatory and we're calling this dude warden. Okay, so that's a hint of, what's to come. I mean, to me, Warden Haddock, and it's a boys' reformatory school. Okay, so Warden Haddock, the name might, send chills up your spine, kind of creepy, and it should. Then I don't remember the judge's name, but the judge who sentenced Robbie to the reformatory. And then we have um David Lohman, the social worker, who has the job of collecting Robbie from the courthouse and transporting him to the reformatory. And so, yeah, so David is Jewish from up north, down south working, himself experiencing incidents of racism and discrimination because of his ethnicity, um, being Jewish and all. So he's kind of sympathetic to Robbie's and Gloria's plight, but for his own reasons, unwilling to really get involved. Let me check my notes and make sure I didn't miss anybody. Oh, Lyle and Red McCormick. We talked about the leg that got kicked by Robbie, the leg belonging to Lyle McCormick, who is also a teenager, who was making unwanted advances to teenage Gloria, a Black girl. And I guess the way that he was advancing upon Gloria was offensive. Um, Gloria certainly wasn't receptive, but trying to be strategic because we're talking about a time in history where um, Black women had to be very strategic about the way that they turned down advances or job offers or things like that for fear of retribution for having the audacity to do so. So while Gloria is trying to tap dance around these advances, Robbie decides, let's just cut to the chase and kick this guy in the leg and get the message across. Ended up getting in trouble himself. Red McCormick is Lyle's dad. Um, and I think it's, worth mentioning that the street or the road that all this kicking and advances being put upon was taking place is on a road called McCormick Road, which is named after both Lyle and his dad, Red, who are like the largest landowners, or Red is anyway, in town. So this is who Robbie has come up against in an effort to defend his sister. So yeah, and then also this landowner is also one of, or would have been one of the targets of the workers' strike or workers organization organizing that the kids' dad was trying to do, which resulted in him being run out of town. So already, um, the kids have got a mark on him anyway for being Robert Stevens Sr.'s son. And then this happens. Let me make sure I got everybody. David Long. Okay. I'm counting their dad, Robert Stevens Sr., as well as their mom, even though she's deceased, as like characters in the text because we learn so much about them vicariously through like the kids thinking about mom and remembering her and things like that. And then dad is just like a presence in the story because he's not present in the story, which makes his presence even that much more pronounced because of what's going on um in the absence of his presence. All right, so we've got the setting and we've got the characters for now for this portion of the book. Next, I want to look at the rising action. And if we look at the plot diagram, we see that the rising action is indicative of exactly what it's called, the rising action. Things are starting to happen in the story, and we know eventually these things are going to lead up to something. But right now we don't know what, but we know the momentum is picking up. um, yeah, we're going somewhere now. What's going on? It's got me turning the pages. This just happened. The character's about to do this, but with the action is rising, right? So that's where we are at the beginning, I think, of the rising action in these first 10 chapters. Now, we already talked about what happened in the first 10 chapters. Somebody got kicked. Somebody else went to the reformatory because of for kicking someone. So now, 10-year-old Robbie Stevens Jr. is at the reformatory, and here, and we said in the book description, he has a talent for seeing ghosts. But we discover once Robbie is transported to the reformatory that his talent extends beyond merely seeing the ghosts. Robbie actually experiences them in ways that seem to be different from the other boys there at the reformatory. He does manage to make a few friends, much like many such settings, both then and now. Robbie experiences, the welcome to the club beatdown once he gets to the reformatory. And then, but around that, there's the experiences with seeing and feeling the ghosts. Now, other kids at the reformatory or have let it be known. Again, I think I said earlier on, if I didn't, then I'm going to say it now. But word around town is the reformatory is haunted. So everybody expects, oh, that place is haunted. So everybody kind of knows what the deal is. There's other kids at the reformatory that have seen ghosts. So much so that when Robbie begins to experience, seeing these ghosts, he's a bit shaken, and the other kids are like, "Oh, just tell him to go away. Tell him he's not real. Tell it it's not real, and it'll leave." So these are the coping mechanisms that the other kids have developed to deal with what goes on at the reformatory. So it's kind of commonplace for people to see ghosts. Here's how you deal with them. So Robbie picks up on these tips and tidbits from the other residents of the reformatory, but it's not clear right now, even though I think based on the way that the author writes it, I feel like the other boys aren't experiencing these ghosts or these haints on such a level as Robert. Like, not only does he see these ghosts, but he feels them. So, like, if, for example, at some point on the grounds, when Robert steps foot in that area or that space or on that place, he experiences an event that happened, presumably in that area, in that space, or on that place. And it's not just, "Oh, I see the ghost, I see what happened here." It's whatever happened to those people before they became ghosts, probably whatever it is that happened that made them become ghosts, right? Is what Robert experiences as if he were one of those people before becoming a ghost. So that's like on another level from what these other guys, if and when they talk about their experiences there at the reformatory, this is like next level type of experience for Robbie. So that's very interesting to me and very off-putting for him, even though just that, the conclusion of chapter 10, it seems like he's kind of not becoming okay with what's going on, but it's not freaking him out as much yet. We don't know. We're just 10 chapters in. So I don't want to jump the gun and get too deep into my predictions for future occurrences. But it seems like Robbie is at a place where he's just kind of like, you know what? Okay, I'm going to experience this. I need to figure out a way to be okay with experiencing these types of things. So that's what's going on in the first 10 chapters. Robbie's at the reformatory. Things are happening. Okay. All right. Meanwhile, back on the homestead, Gloria is trying her best to figure out how she can help her brother um, get out of the reformatory as soon as possible. Because also, in addition to the fact that the reformatory has a history or a reputation of being haunted, there's also the known fact that lots of people who've gone there have not come home, and their explanations for why they've not come home have not been the most clear or believable. And so she's afraid for her brother's safety there at the reformatory. Okay. So she's working, doing the best she can at 16 years old to try to get her brother home. Okay. So let's see what's next. I'm going to check my notes here. We also find out in this section or this portion of the text that Gloria too um has abilities. It says in the description, Robbie has a talent for seeing ghosts. I've not read, or if I did, maybe I didn't catch it, but I don't think I read that Gloria actually sees ghosts as well. But I will go so far as to say that Gloria comes off to me as very highly intuitive, um, maybe even just a little bit psychic. So we're talking about siblings who each have abilities, paranormal abilities. And so I think it's just going to be really exciting to see where these abilities take them, how they help them, how they hinder them, if they will do that, um, and where this story is going to take us. I'm already knowing because Tananarive wrote it that it's going to be a banger. I already know that, so there's no if and but about that. It's just the twists and the turns are just going to be so exhilarating to experience as we read through this text. All right, so um, I'm going to leave off there talking about the plot diagram because we are so early into the text. So we've got a little bit about the setting, um, the characters that we've been privy to meet thus far at the beginning of the story, a little bit of the background, who some of the main players are or who could possibly be as we move through the story. Certainly Robbie and Gloria, main characters. Um, got a few, hairs on the back of my neck standing up. Tananarive do at her finest. Oh my God. And we've got a good start on what's going on with these characters. So I'm gonna hold off there on the plot diagram and switch over to text connections. Now, text connections are those connections that readers make to a book or books that they're reading based on three main things. There's other types of connections, but we're just going to go with three because nobody needs to be confused, okay, any more than folks already are. All right, so the first main kind of text connection is text to text, and this is in no particular order. But that's when you're reading a book and it calls, or some written material, and it calls to mind something that you maybe read in another book, or it makes you think about, or it reminds you of something that you read elsewhere. And you connect those two pieces of text based on those commonalities. All right. Text to self connections, another type of text connection, is where you read something in a text or you read a text and it reminds you of something that's going on with yourself or someone that you know. So you've, connected with this text in such a way that, to yourself, your own happenings or happenings to someone that you know in real life. So maybe there's a character in the text who's suffering from some sort of illness and it's explained in great detail in the text. And maybe as a reader, God forbid, I have that same illness and I can really relate to what's happening to the character in the text because maybe I'm having some of those same issues in reality, just as an example. And then there's text to world or society, the third type of connection that I've talked about. And that's where you read something in a text or some written piece and you connect it to something that's happening in the world or in society in real life. For example, in this text, one of the major, or all of the text connections that I made in the first 10 chapters um, are major to me, but in no particular order. The first text connection that I made was a text to, let me check my notes here, text to world or society, text to world. And that was just in the whole interaction between Lyle McCormick and Gloria Stevens out there on McCormick Road. Not taking away from the fact that Tananarive wrote the scene in such a way that I felt like I was standing on the road with her and Lyle and Robbie while it was going on. But I could see the devaluing and dehumanizing, the ownership that was taken by Lyle McCormick over Gloria's black body. So the text connection that I made, the ownership, devaluing of black bodies, the dehumanizing of black bodies. There was no regard for Gloria's personal space, her boundaries, and even the way that I guess he would think that he was speaking to her was flattering or complimentary, when really it was offensive. And the ideology that she should take such offensive speech as being flattering or complimentary is dehumanizing. So that jumped out at me, the devaluing and dehumanizing of black bodies and by association black lives. So that was one of a big text connection, text to world, text to society that I immediately made. Another one was, and that takes me to page 50 in the text. So I'm going to grab my Kindle here and I'm going to navigate if I can figure out how to turn the screen on this bad boy. Come on, Mr. Kindle. All right, there we go. So I'm going to get in here and I would like you to go to page 50 in the text. At the bottom of page 49, it finishes up the last sentence of 49 leading over into page 50. At the top, it says the old woman's, and then we go to page 50, top of the page. The old woman's eyes had nearly popped out of her head when he called her ma'am. He tried to shake the habit, but politeness was a lesson as old as brushing his teeth. He couldn't understand calling silver-haired Negro men and women gal or auntie or boy or uncle. He had yet to learn the language in Florida. All right, so that's page 50 from the text, and that jumped out at me because not very long ago, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that there was something or other mentioned on my social media. I'm scrolling, I don't know, Facebook, Instagram, one or the other, on my profile, and I ran across a tidbit where someone had referred to the rapper Ice Cube as Uncle. I believe that's what it was, Uncle. And Ice Cube, thanks. I appreciate what you're saying to me, the feeling that you're trying to convey to me, but don't call me Uncle. And I think it was Uncle. It could have been Goat, but I want to say it was Uncle. Um, and it's just a reference to how long, Cube's been in the game. It's been around for a while. NWA was just bursting onto the scene when I was a girl, hip hop. Like you watch that movie, oh, what is it? I don't know, not Love Jones, but the other one, Brown Sugar or something with Sanaa Lathan and the other guy. I can't think of his name right now. Anyway, when did you first fall in love with hip hop? And the beginning of hip hop and when it started, dude, I was there when hip hop started. I was there when NWA burst onto the scene. And so I've watched Ice Cube's evolution over the years, mad respect. But he's like, yeah, don't call me uncle. And it was just kind of like, oh, okay, Ice Cube doesn't want to be called uncle. Moving on. Oprah Winfrey, Gayle King, most recently Ava DuVernay, ladies who've all been referred to as auntie. And just as a term of endearment among the Black community, giving respect where respect is due, I had no idea. Now, I always knew about boy and gal or girl, as disrespectful terms um, to older and elderly Black men and women. But I didn't know about auntie and uncle. I really did not. I myself am guilty of having, or referring to people as auntie and out of love or, affection. And they're not really my auntie, but it's like you feel like family to me type thing. I had no idea that it was a term that had been used to um as a means of disrespecting or minimizing elderly Black men and women. So that certainly puts, or older Black men and women, it certainly puts another spin on and makes me reflect on um, using those terms going forward. I had no idea. I was like, wow, auntie and uncle is problem. So now I'm wondering if that had anything to do with Ice Cube saying, yeah, don't call me uncle. If Ice Cube did in fact say, don't call me uncle, I'm thinking it was Ice Cube. I'm wondering if that is behind his not wanting to be referred to by that label. Ava DuVernay, I think, in an interview, may have said something about not feeling like I'm not that old to be referred to as auntie. And when we think about auntie, we think about this type of persona. And yeah, I'm not quite there yet. And while that may be true, I'm also wondering if some portion of her not wanting to be necessarily referred to as auntie had to do with this information that I just learned. Like it's not historically, um, if it's not actually your auntie, and coming from certain other populations, it's not necessarily a term of endearment or respect. So it hadn't been. I'm still kind of like, wow. But yeah, so that was a text connection that I made, text to world society that I made based on that because it was just, that was something I didn't know. Very interesting. Again, Tananarive has a way of weaving in those little tidbits of information in her story that while you're caught up in the story you're reading, you go, wow, I didn't know that. But it also sends you off on your own, hunt to find more information. So you continue to learn, and it's just, all good. So, okay. The other text connection, I don't want to kill it with 55,000 text connections because, again, we're just at the first 10 chapters of the story. And I just know, and I know you know too, there's going to be multiple other text connections that we're going to be able to make as we work our way through the text. But these are just the ones that jumped out at me right away. All right, excuse me, let me get some water because it seems like I feel like I need to cough, and I don't want to do that. So, okay. The other big text connection that I made was throughout the 10 chapters and various points, the Rosewood Massacre was mentioned by the residents of Florida or Gracetown, Florida. As the Rosewood, what happened at Rosewood. Now, Rosewood, while Gracetown is a fictitious town in Florida, maybe, I think so. Rosewood is not. So prior to 1950, there was a massacre in the town of Rosewood, Florida, um, race related, and it's referenced in this story. And you get the feeling like, what happened in Rosewood almost happened here. Had not been for that doggone Robert Stevens Sr., the kid's dad type situation. So, but Rosewood, there's a movie about the Rosewood Massacre. So this would be text to, not necessarily text. I'm sure there's a book or two or 38 written about the Rosewood Massacre. However, I'm not referring to any text. I'm referring to the movie that I watched several years ago. I believe it was produced by John Singleton, and it was just called Rosewood. Elise Neal starred in it, as well as Ving Rhames, Don Cheadle, Esther Roll, a host of other people, A-list actors, and so on. Um, but it depicted the events of the Rosewood Massacre. And God, if I say one more time. So check that out. Definitely a text/media connection. Rosewood was a real thing, is a real place. So check that text connection out too. That jumped out at me. But I'm gonna, so those are some main text connections that got a hold to me as I was reading the first 10 chapters. And I'm going to cap it at that because, again, as we move forward in the text, many, many, many more text connections, I'm sure, are going to jump out at us. And we want to talk about those when it's time to talk about it, right? Okay, so there's a wrap for the text connections. Next up, I'm going to do some Jerry Springer type ish and get to our final thoughts. So stay tuned. All right, the wrap up. Here, I just want to talk about like some parting thoughts that I had after the reading experience. Again, chapters 1 through 10. We probably got about 40 more chapters to read. So we'll have many other instances of parting thoughts before we put it all together in our overview of, oh my God, what did we just read? But this first 10 chapters, my final thoughts. I got a few of them here, index cards. Listen, pissed off at Robert Stevens Sr. Now, I understand that his life was in jeopardy. He had to, leave town, unplanned, spur of the moment in order to save his life. I understand that. I sympathize and empathize with that. I myself have, he's on the other side now. Hey, Uncle Jack. Um, But he too was run out of town, not for trying to organize, but for other infractions in a small Mississippi town. And he was run out of town, had to change his name, join the army, all this and that in order to stay safe and alive. So I certainly can understand Robert Stevens Sr. having to relocate at in the spur of the moment for his own safety. What I do not care for is the fact that it's like he just threw those kids to the wolves. I don't understand how, and maybe he didn't think that far into it. Maybe he doesn't understand it himself. I don't understand how he could have thought that his children would be safe in his absence based on the legacy that he left behind. Now, I'm hoping that Tananarive does not surprise us with some twist and turn down the line in the plot, because Gloria already is a little bit suspicious. Like, why haven't I heard from my dad in this amount of time? Usually he calls on this day and he didn't call. Like, hoping nothing has happened to their dad. God forbid, because their mother is already not in the picture, and now to have something tragic happen to their dad. So I hope that's not the case. But if that's not the case, then why has this man not reached out to his children? Why does he not know what's happening to his son? Why has he not, prior to this, sent for his children to be brought wherever he is, or at least relocated somewhere else? I don't know. I'm sure there are things that I don't, we as readers aren't privy to, we don't know quite yet, to help us piece together a better understanding about what the hell is going on with Robert Stevens Sr. Um, and it's coming. I just know it is. I'm just impatient, but right off the bat with it, I'm a little pissed at Dad because I don't care for what's going on with 10-year-old Robert Stevens Jr. or 16-year-old Gloria Stevens, for either, for that matter. Like, these are babies and they need help, and I'm pissed. All right, what else am I pissed off about? Okay, yeah, we can be pissed off about all of the various racial injustices taking place in this text. But I'm going to hold off on that because we've got, again, multiple chapters to get through, and I just know that I have not reached my highest level of pistivity. So I'm going to hold off on being pissed off until, a later time. And lastly, but not leastly, I'm very suspicious of lots of different people. We're only 10 chapters in, and I'm already ready to go through the text and step into the book and grab David Lohman by the ear and talk to him about a few things. Again, I understand that he's subject to discrimination as well for being Jewish, and he's in the Deep South and blah, blah, blah. And we talked a little bit about it. Talks a little bit about in the text, his own children, experiencing some racism and things or discrimination for not, being Christian, but being Jewish instead. So yeah, I can feel for him on the one hand, but on the other hand, it just seems like, isn't there anything you can do? If you really think about it, I don't know. Maybe there's not. I don't know, but it doesn't keep me from being pissed off about it. And then there's Miss Anne, and if I didn't mention it before, Miss Anne is another secondary character that we met. I think I did not mention it, but she is the lady for whom Gloria works. Gloria had to drop out of school in order to work to help provide for her brother. So she works for Miss Anne as a maid, cook, so on and so forth. And Miss Anne, having gotten word of what all's going on with Robbie, is dismayed and works her way around to offering to make a few phone calls and see what she could do to help Gloria out in her pursuit to help Gloria, or Bobby rather, Robbie. Lord, I done gave the child a whole new nickname, Bobby, Robbie. So Gloria's determined to help her brother, and Miss Ann has decided, oh, maybe I know somebody. I'll make some calls. But I'm suspicious as hell because, but we'll see how it turns out. We'll see where it goes with these things. But those are my final thoughts on chapters 1 through 10 of the Reformatory by Tananarive. I'm very interested in knowing what your thoughts are. So I want to take this time right now to invite you to visit our weblog at www.february365.com. There you'll find discussion questions relative to the first 10 chapters of the book that we've read. There's a couple discussion questions posted there that I would love for you to take a moment to respond to so we can, have some discourse back and forth about it. I talked about some text connections that I made. Maybe you made those same text connections. Maybe you made some that I didn't make or that I overlooked or that I missed. Maybe you want to post those over on the blog and let me know, your reactions and your responses, your thoughts. I've kind of shared my thoughts on what I've read. I'm very, very interested in knowing yours. So jump on over to the blog, www.february365.com. Respond to the questions, post your comments. Let me know what you think. And I'm looking forward to reading those responses and things like that. Meanwhile, our next scheduled Black is Lit Book Club Experience meeting is scheduled for Sunday, December 31st. Again, Sunday, December 31st, at which time I will be digging into chapters 11 through 20. I'll say that again. Sunday, December 31st. Yes, it's New Year's Eve. And again, the good thing about these meetings is that you can click on play whenever you feel like it, right? So Sunday, December 31st is when the next episode of the Black Stick Book Club Experience will be uploaded and ready for your viewing. We will be discussing chapters 11 through 20. Hope to see you there. Thanks again so much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed chatting it up about this book with me, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.